Good morning, students. Yesterday we had seen how important these two river systems, that is River Tigris and River Euphrates, were in the development of the Mesopotamian civilization. Uh, but then it is nothing surprising there that because in the ancient world, all the civilizations developed around the respective river systems, whether it was Nile in Egypt, where the ancient Egyptian civilization evolved, or in India, where Indus Valley civilization evolved around rivers, the river Indus, Jhelum, Ravi, Satluj, all these rivers, River Ganga for that matter. And then even if you talk about the Chinese civilization, where the earliest Chinese civilization evolved around River Yangtze. So it is indeed very important, these river systems, for the growth of humans, and that is how they have evolved. The early humans today, it you can humans can afford to live in arid areas where water supply kind of goes through pipelines for kilometers and kilometers, but in earlier times it had to be around a water source. Now, Mesopotamia and its geography. Iraq is land of diverse environments. In the northeast lies green undulating plains. Undulating plains would mean uneven plains, gradually rising to tree-covered mountains. And here, agriculture began between 7,000 and 6,000 BC. Students, today agriculture, you take it as a fact of life, where you have farmers, whether you have and whether he is doing it with his machinery, he is plowing the field, he is sowing the seeds, and then the harvest season arrives and you buy the stuff from the market. But you have to understand, when you talk about the journey of a man from hunting to gathering, then agriculture happens to be a landmark event in his journey, because agriculture is a sign, it's an indication that that particular race or that particular group of community of people now had developed a system whereby they had advanced knowledge of seeds, they could understand the weather patterns, they could understand the fertility of soil, as to which soil was the best to invest their time and energy on. Then they had developed the system of taming animals, then because naturally, then also having a knowledge about which animal would be the best for plowing the fields. So you can understand, this canal network. So you can understand that agriculture definitely was an indication that yes, a particular civilization or a particular bunch of people were now far more developed and advanced. uh, in the north, there is a stretch of upland called a steppe, where animal herding offers people a better livelihood than agriculture. Students, what is steppe? Uh, I wish we had the classes on, but steppe, for the students of geography, I am sure you must have studied some point in time. Steppes are basically grasslands. Okay, these are grassland systems where you have hundreds and thousands of acres of grass and grass and grass. Okay, where animal herding happens to be the most important activity. Okay, so these are the famous grasslands, and just like steppe, you must have studied about in geography. Prairies are also very very important grasslands of United States of America. In similar fashion, Argentina has pampas. Then taiga is there in Europe and Asia. Okay, so and of course selvas in South America. I hope you have studied about them. So these are also very very prominent and vast grasslands which have been there for centuries and centuries and centuries, and very important animal herding and breeding grounds for their respective civilizations and for their respective geographies. The south is a desert, and there is the first cities and writing where the first cities in the writing emerged. as you can see this. Now this happens to be the map of some very famous and very important towns of the ancient world. That is, Ur happens to be very important, Uruk happens to be extremely important, then this is Baghdad, the present day capital of Iraq, and Babylon, we all know about how important it is. Then Assur happens to be or rather they are the ones who are considered to be the ones the earliest of the ones who started the Persian civilization. Okay, so this is indeed a very important map. This desert could support cities because of river Euphrates and Tigris, which rise in the northern mountains of Turkey. Yes, carry loads of silt, that is fine mud, when they flood or when their water is load of silt. You have studied in geography, and that is the soil which is known as the alluvial soil. Yes. After the Euphrates has entered the desert, its water flows out into small channels. These channels flood their respective banks and in the past functioned as an irrigation canals. Water could be let into the fields of wheat, barley, peas, or lentils where necessary. Now, as you have seen, students, even in India, all the rivers, when they enter sea, they gradually spread out before entering the sea. Okay, and they make the whole areas very fertile because they bring a huge amount of silt through their journey. Okay, and these areas are very fertile, and they actually, because they spread into hundreds of acres, and that is why in fact you must have also studied where river Ganga, when it enters Bangladesh and it opens out, and that's where Sundarbans are, one of the largest delta of the world. So significance of urbanism. Now, what is urbanism? Now, students, urban is just we think that yes, any kind of town is an urban life. That's what makes things urban, and where you do not have good roads and good communication facilities, that happens to be a rural area where we do not have skyscrapers, metros, or airports. That is considered to be rural. No, this actually chapter provides you with a wonderful definition of what exactly defines urban life. The significance of urbanism. Cities and towns are not just places with large populations. It is when an economy develops in spheres other than food production that it becomes an advantage for people to cluster in towns. Urban economies comprise, besides food production, trade, manufacturers, and services. City people thus cease to be self sufficient and depend on the products or services of others. Now, students, this is what really typifies an urban setup, whereby, for example, uh, we all today live in urban setups. Now, how many of you actually grow wheat in your house? Do I grow it? I definitely don't. How many of you actually grow potatoes and different vegetables in your house? You clearly don't. How many of you actually have cows in your house where you go every morning and every evening to extract milk? Probably none of you do. But are we not using these items? Of course we do, right? Of course we do. You use your beds, you use your tables, your dining table, your furniture. Do you actually produce them? Yeah. Do you have a carpenter in your house? Probably not, right? You just go to the market, shell out money, and purchase these things. Now, this is actually the one of the earliest and the pure definitions of urban life, whereby you use items which you basically do not produce. In earlier times, most of the things, if even if it was a barter system, right? Even if you were getting uh, salt, but it was always an exchange of something. You were probably producing sugar, probably you were producing or growing vegetables. And that is what facilitated that transaction, whereby you gave that sugar and in exchange for that you got salt from someone, right? But those things don't happen in an urban setup, whereby different people do these things. They just sell it to you and you just purchase them, and you might be having a different occupation altogether, which would have probably nothing to do with farming, right? Now, there is a continuous interaction among them. For instance, the carver of a stone seal requires bronze tools that he himself cannot make, and colored stones for the seals that he does not does not know where to get. His specialization is fine carving, not trading. So it is essentially the earliest form of division of labor, whereby, to give you a classic example, students, in the earlier times, say for example, Potter, right? He would be the one, जिसको आप कुम्हार कहते हो, right? कुम्हार क्या करता था शुरू में? He would be the one who would be responsible for getting the soil, वो उसको गूंथता है, then he is also the expert in firing it, चूल्हे में कितने temperature चाहिए, he is aware of it. Then he is the one who would be responsible for drying it. He would be the one who would be responsible for mastery over the potter's wheel. He is in fact all in all, right? But now what they are talking about in an urban setup is someone who just knows how to do the job, right? He probably have has no idea about A to Z of the production process. Okay, I hope it is clear now. Okay, now further there must be a social organization in place. Fuel, metal, various stones, wood, etc. come from many different places for certain manufacturers. Yes, now if you are having a kiln, where you are burning things, when you are where you are heating things, you probably getting, of course, wood or coal from some other source, right? That is it. So that is an urban setup. And gradually, uh, man also, after he transcended the level of, he crossed that boundary of where he thought that agriculture was the highest form of achievement. Okay, after these things happen when you have already perfected the art and the knowledge of agriculture. Now you, and only then you, cross into an urban setup. No society crosses into an urban setup without having an experience of agriculture, right? The significance of urbanism, what else is there? Movements of goods into cities, however rich in Mesopotamia in mineral sources, were few. Most part of south lacked stones for tools, seals, and jewels. The wood of the Iraqi date palm. That is exactly system. This paragraph essentially is about students. You had certain things, the people down the valley had certain other things. You had something that they needed, they have something that you need. And that is how the whole trading system happens. They sell something to you, you sell something to them, and whether it is through barter or whether it is through the ancient form of coinage, but definitely you need something that they have and they need something that you have, and that is what actually facilitates trade and commerce. Okay, thank you. We shall continue tomorrow.